Okay, while we're waiting for the wig to dry, we're going to make some additional materials to use for some of the accessories for this action figure. Okay, so I've cut some pieces of that pre-wrap. I have just some discarded tissue paper. I'm going to use some glue and some paint. This creates a nice kind of imitation leather. It can also create an imitation kind of a quilted type fabric. Add a little bit of water to the white glue. Don't work it in too much or you'll end up gluing this piece of paper to this tissue paper to the paper underneath. Very carefully and slowly peel it off of the surface that you that you were working on, and then set it somewhere where it is just kind of barely barely touching until it dries. Okay, and then we'll add some paint to that. Okay, so when the wig has dried, you can bend the bangs, I guess you'd call them, back, and then trim the tied ends to kind of blend. And if you have any like really long pieces, you can trim those a little bit. And then using this DNC floss, you can do a couple of different things. You can leave it as it is, and it looks kind of cool that way. But if you would prefer it to look more like separate strands of hair, you can actually separate these out. You're essentially untwisting this, so you have to kind of untwist it in the opposite way that it wants to twist, however far down you want to go. And that, you know, you can do that with some and leave the others. My fingers are a little bit sticky, so they're... Anyway, and then you can figure out what kind of a hairstyle you want. You know, either something more kind of formal, or it can be just kind of waving in the wind. Alright, so we're going to get started on the clothes now. And the first thing that we're going to do is this undershirt that this character will be wearing. And this is kind of going to be fashion of kind of Enlightenment era Europe. So I have this pre-wrap. I'm using white, and I actually want to create kind of a ruffled, you know, kind of a fancy collar. And so I'm going to create those ruffles now. Just be a little bit easier. Tried this without, you know, doing that first, and it was a little bit harder. This isn't going to stick quite as easily since you have painted the figure, but it still is kind of sticky. Okay, so that's the collar. We don't need to make the whole shirt because they're going to be wearing a vest and all that. It's so you just kind of make the parts of the clothes that will be actually showing. Or, I mean, you can have a little bit of an overlap, but... Okay, once again, we're going to make these ruffles. Okay, the pants or breeches are going to be green. And this material is pretty forgiving, so if you have a piece cut a little bit the wrong size or shape, just don't worry too much. You can layer on top of it to cover up different parts. You can do a number of things. So it's pretty nice that way. Definitely not like sewing, which is much more precision. I personally prefer to kind of stretch things to make it fit rather than have it be too large, just because it saves a little bit of material, and it also makes it stay on better. And don't worry about the waistband unless you're actually going to be showing the waistband, but this is going to be covered up. I also want to show you another way of making material that you can use for some of the different accessories, clothes, things like that. Get some acrylic paint and mix up a color. Add some water so that it's nice and kind of juicy and thin. And then you just take some cut pre-wrap and you just kind of mash it into that. You will get your hands painted, so just be prepared for having to wash your hands afterwards. And then just let that dry somewhere where you're just kind of draping it over like the edge of a box or something. We still have quite a bit more, so I'm actually going to get some white self-adhesive bandage. Okay, now we're going to make the little vest, and first what you want to do is lay the little figure on a piece of paper,